Hello.
Oh, yep.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic despite of what's going on in the
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
We're doing great.
Yep.
What
Yeah.
about yourself?
I've been doing pretty good, man. I just taking it day by day. A lot of homeschooling with my kids and stuff. So
Uh, well, it's all stemming from the what I like to call the Chinese communist virus. So the thing
yeah.
is, I escaped the former evil empire. And by the way, speaking of the Chinese, today is kind of an important date. It marks exactly 30 days since the uh, putting down and killing of the real peaceful protesters looking for freedom in China, Tiananmen Square. So
Yeah.
it's a real
Yeah.
30 years ago to the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, it is. Wow.
So this
Wow.
Chinese communist virus, the way I'm looking at it, I saw that I escaped the communists for good. But well, lo and behold, they reached us across the globe with their
Yeah.
virus. So
Well,
I
yeah,
feel,
the virus. Well, in other
oh,
ways too. I mean, when you look at the communism that escaped Germany, the intellectual communism before Hitler's fall that came here in the forms of Theodore Adorno. You also look at the communism. You're from the USSR, so
right.
during the 80s there were a lot of communist propaganda, not only in American universities but throughout Latin America that Ronald Reagan had to kind of defeat. So it seems like it resurfaces in one form of another. You came here in the 80s, right? Early 80s.
80, end of 88 to be exact, October of 88. Yep.
Oh wow, that's like close to the fall then. Pretty
Yeah,
close.
just a year prior to the collapse of the Iron Curtain. That's exactly right. I never
Yeah.
lived in Russia. So you're from Russia? No, I'm not from Russia. I'm from USSR. I never lived in Russia.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know. I have my best friends from Romania,
Uh,
and at the time, Romania, they were a part of, a part of that regime. They were one of the member states of that regime. Um,
it's a so-called Warsaw Pact. That's exactly right.
yeah, so I
Yep.
know like people from the region, and the stories are pretty similar, because of how that regime operated. Um,
That's
I
right.
wanted
That's right.
I wanted to get your take on, because I'm a big fan of your videos,
Oh, thank
and
you.
oh man, your videos are excellent, and it really highlights the American ignorance. Um, your latest
Well,
video,
wait. Not Americans. Some.
some,
Unfortunately, very few of those. Very few. So
yeah,
I want to underline that because as I go to this so-called protest, I see mostly the same faces. I even
yeah,
recognize them now, so that's good news.
yeah. I would
So
agree, and
go ahead.
statistically, that's true too, Vlad. Statistically, the very, very hardcore left, they're really a small minority, but the problem in the United States is that our institutions have been corrupted. You look at the media, you look at Hollywood, our academic institutions from K through college, some of these think tanks, the unions. I mean, you name it. Over time, liberalism have infiltrated these institutions, so they can kind of paint this canvas or this 3D picture that they're in the majority when they're actually not. They've just been able to sway people that are, not like-minded to kind of vote along their lines. So I wanted to get your take on, how do you feel about, the left coming from the USSR, and how do you feel about the left and where they're trying to take the country?
Well, these people are totally ignorant. They don't even know what they're asking for, and once what they're aspiring for and so-called fighting for, as they like to call it, comes to fruition, they'll be up to a rude awakening. I live this
Mm-hmm.
nightmare. and there's nothing, not even one single positive thing that I can say about the so-called socialist regime. And by the way, when I'm using the word liberalism and liberals, they've hijacked this word. I mean, the word
Yep.
liberal in the Soviet Union, for example, meant exact opposites to what liberal and liberalism means, or rather, hijacked meaning with the word liberalism here means. So
Mm-hmm.
I would stay away from using the word liberals because it kind of can go both ways, the
Yep.
hijack way and the actual way. I would call them for what they are, the leftists, the communists, the socialists, because in reality, that's what they are. And there's nothing positive that you can say about either of those terms, as opposed to the word liberalism. So
Mm-hmm.
again, to get back to answering your question, it's a nightmare. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, every single time when they try to implement in reality, not in theory, not just walking along the streets, banging pots and asking for equality, when in reality, the so-called socialist ideas and ideals get implemented, it always, with no exception, not even one,
Yep.
turn out to be totalitarianism
Yep.
every single time. So
Yep.
essentially, what these people are asking for is a totalitarian regime. It
Yep.
happens, I repeat, every single time.
Absolutely, especially when you look at some of the pushes that are coming from the left in terms of how we vote, the getting rid of the electoral college, which I think would, first of all, you would have to pass an amendment to do that. That's not just a simple piece of legislation. You would have to pass an amendment. But even contemplating doing so is a huge mistake. Our founder set up a system where each state were going to be represented based on their interests and the individual. It's not just about mass votership or mass, the winner takes all for um, a popular vote. I mean, there's big danger in that. And this country, honestly, is very close. If it wasn't for Donald Trump winning that election in 2016, I think this country would be a little bit closer to being one party rulership. And look at states like California, New York, New Jersey. Those states, they are totally one party ruled, and you see the results. And so that's what I fear for the country. They're trying to flip Texas. They're trying to flip North Carolina. They're trying to flip Florida. They flip one of those, it's going to be pretty hard to fight them.
Well, that is true. But then again, we tend to look at a relatively short period of time. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, like we look at the let's say rise of writing of what's going on with the leftist movement of today.
Yep.
I mean, just stretch the time a little bit far back, and you'll see that the history is repeating itself, for better or for worse.
Yeah, it
Because
is.
we dealt with it in the 60s and the 70s, and well, in the end, Reagan and Nixon, they took 49 out of 50 states. So,
Yeah, they did.
you know, things do change, and what's happening today hopefully will help us to get Trump get reelected. When people see the alternative of electing the Democrats, imagine how our mayor of New York City, because that's where I live, is dealing with the writing and stretch it to the rest of America. I mean, any sane person will scratch their head and think, "Oh, wait a minute. So if we get the Democratic president, that's what's going to be happening across the country. Well, we better give Trump another chance." I mean, among any reasons, many other reasons to give Trump
Yeah.
another chance to run
I,
as
I I agree. I think they're definitely helping his cause.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just everything is so convoluted now because of the anger with George Floyd, and also after after 12 weeks of being locked down because of COVID. I think people, there's a lot of anger and anxiety in the atmosphere, and usually in an election year, and I've been tracking this for a while, during the summer, even during an election year, some of that anxiety kind of dissipates until the fall. And so we're going into the summer with all of these issues. And so there's a lot of anxiety in the atmosphere.
Well, anxiety and anger. I personally am furious. I'm absolutely furious at what's going on.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
with this riot, for example, it's just a total disgrace and it's totally disgusting.
mm-hmm.
Yes, there was a criminal, a person who had a criminal past, a person who committed a criminal offense. That's why the store owner called the police on him.
Yeah.
And had he not resisted the arrest, nothing would have happened. I mean, it's
Yeah.
such a simple rule. If the police tells you don't move, just don't move. I mean,
I
after
agree.
all, talking about USSR, we're not talking about the Soviet police state where no matter what, innocent or not, you'll be beaten to the pulp. I mean,
Yeah.
in America, 99.999% of the police, in my mind, are normal law-abiding officers. I happen
Yeah.
to know quite a few of them. They're great, great guys who are keeping us safe. If not them,
Yeah.
who else will keep us safe, right?
Yep.
Who can
That's true.
call when we're in danger?
That's true.
So, so it's a simple, case of one policeman, well, just using some excessive force. It was an accident, and in the
Mm-hmm.
country of law and order, when an accident happens, you get punished. I mean, I can sort of could have understood maybe writing if a policeman kills an innocent man for no reason whatsoever, nothing happens to him. Well, yeah, there's a cause to fight for, but the guy is sitting in prison, so
Mm-hmm.
he should have been closed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. I unfortunately, you have Antifa on the ground stoking up the flames. There have been a lot of videos. I've seen it. Some of it, I know you've been on Fox on a few of the shows there. I saw on Tucker Carlson and some of the other shows videos of Antifa members egging people on. You've also had you've also have people going into jail. Now, this is something that this is something that people are missing. People are going into jail in some of these liberal cities, and some of these prosecutors and judges are just letting them go. That's one other thing. And
uh,
so, yeah. I mean, that's really happening. People are going to jail for a few hours, getting out, and then going back into the mess. And
well,
so,
that's the new system that was implemented, I believe, in February of this year in our New York City with
yeah,
no bail system. I mean, so what's the point of even arresting them and bothering of to do that, to
yeah,
arrest the criminals? And how can you fight criminals if there's no punishment?
yeah,
There's a
yeah,
crime, but there's no punishment. So
yeah,
that's the worst, absolute the worst system that can happen. I mean, we can turn into, I know, in the banana republic if this will continue that way. That's what makes America the greatest country on earth. Really, one thing that makes it the greatest country on earth, besides the
hmm
people, of course, is the system of governance and the system where everybody being equal before the law. That's
yep,
the most fundamental, I mean, really the most fundamental, the most important thing to keep the country together and to make this country a successful country. There are very few successful countries in the world when it comes, stop and think about it. Out of 200
yeah,
countries, how many countries are successful?
yeah,
Very,
yeah,
very, very few. None
yeah.
of them are in Africa, by the way.
Well, I look at, I look at America big picture. We're a very young country. We're only like 240 something years old. That's not really a long time. A lot of these European countries are thousands and thousands of years old. Before there were kings and lords and so forth. And here we are, this small republic that's only been around for 200 and plus year, and now we are the dominant superpower in the world, and we have, I would say, the most freedoms in the world. It's enshrined in our Constitution, and those freedoms have allowed us to prosper. Also, think there is a spiritual side of this country. Our Judeo-Christian beliefs and our background, that spiritual side, that covenant that we have with, I would say, our Creator, allowed the country to prosper as well. So I think those are the underlying factors. But getting back to something you said, you talked about socialism and how Americans don't really, those few Americans that are advocating it for, don't really know what they're asking for. Did you see the country going in this direction when you first arrived, or because I was, to be honest, I was very young when you came here, so I vaguely remember those days. I do remember Ronald Reagan. I have probably read everything about him. I even read his diary, but those days are, as I was not an adult. So did you see the country, kind of going this way? It seemed to be more optimism then, and more lightheartedness then, and more stability, from what I gathered.
I'm not so sure. I
Mm-hmm.
will tell you that the first shock of my life, and it was literally weeks after I had escaped from the USSR, when I was in Italy, and I was so happy that finally I'm free, no longer chained to that system, inhumane system, and I'm enjoying and taking in the sights, and all of a sudden I say hammer and sickle. And I say sign, Parte Comunista Italiano, something like that in Italian. And I'm totally shocked. I even took a picture showing like middle fingers to the sign.
Wow.
That was the first shock. Then,
Mm-hmm.
of course, I came to America, and I remember that I was looking for to share a place in Manhattan. And there's, I was young and I guess a little bit attractive, and there's a girl who had a large apartment in Manhattan, and she was sharing maybe 4 or 5 rooms or so. But again, at that age, at that time, for me, it was perfectly fine just to have like a little corner, a little piece for myself.
Lay your head.
And she was kind of leaning, I guess, towards renting this little room to me until we started a conversation that somehow involved Czechoslovakia. And of course, at that
Ooh.
time, to me, I couldn't kind of see much of a difference. To me, Americans were kind of all the same. And even, by the way, back in USSR, when I adored Reagan and the Americans who I would meet over there, at great danger, by the way, of doing so, would kind of bash Reagan or squirm when I bring up the name Reagan. I just couldn't understand. It's like, oh, is
Mm-hmm.
he like American president? Why would you squirm at the president? But anyway, so when I started this conversation about Czechoslovakia and what the Soviets did in 1968 to squash this Prague Spring uprising, I never heard from her. She never gave me a call and offered me the place. I kind of put two together, figured, yeah, probably it was that conversation that
Yeah.
disqualified.
Wow.
That was kind of the first sort of awakening. Then a year later, I was going to Israel because my grandparents, they emigrated from USSR back in the 70s, 72, I believe. So
Yep.
I hadn't seen them for a long time. So a year after I come to the States in 1988, in 1989, I'm making my first overseas trip to Israel to finally get reunited with my grandparents. And there was a stopover in London. So I had about half a day between the planes. So I took this opportunity to explore London.
Okay.
And in 1989, there was U.S. involvement, I think, in Iraq, the first
Yes.
Iraq.
That's when they were working with Saddam at the time. It was Iraq and it was Iran versus Iraq.
Yeah, but there was some sort of U.S. involvement. I'm trying to remember what it was. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so here I'm in London. I see a huge demonstration. I get attracted to it. I come closer, and it was a complete and total shock to me when all of a sudden I see hammer and sickle and the red flags with the hammer and sickle. I can understand there's one thing, protesting something,
Wow.
even though they're British. What do they have to do with our U.S. Policies? But it's a free country. It's okay to demonstrate. But joining or including rather the hammer and sickle and the red flags and the communist slogans into this anti-Iraq or whatever demonstration, what does that have to do with all of what they were protesting against. So
Yeah.
that was kind of another shock. Right? I had the video cameras, so video taped this whole demonstration, but that's when sort of awakening started. Started realizing that it seems like they're different Americans. And
Yeah.
when the time came when I was becoming the U.S. citizen, about 6 years after I come to the country, I didn't get fooled with a lot of not a lot, but a number of my fellow Soviet immigrants, so immigrants from USSR. They get fooled by the words. They think it's kind of a good thing, but I figured everything out by then. So right there, I joined the Republican Party and never looked back.
That's funny. It's oh wow, Vlad. It's the same story for a lot of my friends from the USSR, and from some of those surrounding states. Particularly, I have friends from Poland. They they hate the regime. They hate Putin, and they're just
Absolutely.
they're just oh my god. It's I mean the stories are the same. They're like I immediately registered as a Republican because the Democrats they sound like communists, and I'm like wow. People see this coming here from overseas, but here we are, our own American citizens without born here has every tool available to research these things and try to get some understanding around them, but refuse to because of I believe that a lot of Americans it's emotional. They're emotional voters, liberal, well, who we call
No,
liberal.
it's emotional. Listen, I'm not gonna mean force. That's stupid. They're not emotional. They're just idiots. Imbeciles. That's who they are. I mean, really.
Yeah.
And by the way, when we talk about the Democrats, we're talking about the Democrats, 1980s Democrats. I mean, thinking of the Democrats today. When was the last time the Democrats would say, "Ask not what your country can do for you"? I mean, really? When was the last time the Democrats asked for lowering taxes? So that was the last time that the Democrats had kind of decent views and decent leaders. Since then, they moved so much to the left that Britt Hume, just reading his comments, he used the analogy that it was so far left that even the buses don't go there anymore.
That is hilarious. Wow. I read an article that I think you were quoted. It was years ago, where you said America was a paradise on earth. You're like You compared it to a paradise, and I'm like, wow. That's simply just amazing.
Well, to me, America was paradise. Listen, America to me is paradise on earth in the sense that it's the best country the humankind has ever come up with. I mean, obviously nothing's perfect. And that's why I qualify. I'm not using the word paradise. I'm using. Are you referring to the article, right? When
yeah.
Florida? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a paradise on Earth, meaning it's the best place you can think of that there is out there. Out of 200 or so countries that are out there, that there is on Earth, realistically. Because I mean, look at the people. Look at those animals that are smashing the stores. I mean, these are animals. Really?
Yeah.
Look what do to other people. I mean, go back to the Second World War. Look at the experiments on the Jews, or what the Japanese did to fellow to the occupied Chinese in Nanking and so on. The experiments. I mean, this we call these people humans. No, they're worse than animals.
Yeah.
So, I lost my train of thought. Anyway, so I have basically wrapped to my place of work. Do you want to continue, or do you want to kind of put it off till next time?
Well, we can stop now. You can go to work. Man,
I remember what we were talking about. Let me finish this thought. The paradise on earth. That's all. That's my train of thought. So this is the best country that has ever existed, and still is the best country in the whole world. If that were not the case, people would have been risking their lives swimming across the shark-infested waters between Cuba and the United States, or trying to cross the border in the middle of the night from around the world through Mexico or Canada. and it's just amazing. I mean, you would think that any common sense person would think, hey, if America is so bad, why is nobody kind of escaping the United States in the middle of the night, trying to infiltrate some other country and ask for political asylum?
I
It's
point
only
that
happened
out. I point
in
that
the West.
out countless times, Vlad. One last question, because I know you got to go. Because it's been quiet in Russia lately. I have a feeling. Where does Putin fit in all this? And I know all about Putin. I've done all the research, but where does he fit in all of this chaos? You know, you have the coronavirus stuff going on. The U.S. and China, they're having words. You have all this pandemonium on the streets in various cities around this country, the United States of America. What's Putin's end game? Because this guy seems to be gaining strength with every president except this one, I would say. And I've been watching him very closely since since Clinton, I would say. When the Yeltsin regime stepped down and then Putin was kind of installed there. But it seems like he gets stronger and stronger, except for this particular president. What do you think the end game is for him?
Well, this guy is up to no good, and his end game. Basically, the only thing that Putin and his clique are thinking about is how to cling to power. One of the best ways of doing it is, and it's been proven successful over and over and over again, especially with the stupid Russians, is to have a real or to invent the external enemy. Nothing unites people more than the external enemy.
Mm-hmm.
So when you keep on telling your citizens that America is your enemy, that America is trying to get a piece of Russia, that America is building its military might for the sole purpose of conquering Russia. The Second World War to the Russians is like it happened almost yesterday. All they talk about is the Second World War. Oh, and by the way, they do not call it even Second World War. They call it, I'm sure you know, the Great Patriotic War, the war that has never existed. And if you tell the Russians that they are the ones who started this war in 1939, together with the Germans, you go to jail today. And another horrible thing that is happening in Russia today, and Putin kind of encourages that as well, is a re-glorification of Stalin, the mass murderer. I mean, stop and think about it.
Wow.
In the minds of the Russians, Stalin wasn't that bad. Actually, Stalin was pretty good. They have no problems with the guy who murdered tens of millions of its own citizens. There's absolutely no qualms about it. So that should tell you volumes about who the Russians are in their mind.
Wow. I know. And just one last thought. I know when it comes to Vladimir Putin, there are different, there are different types of individuals kind of behind him. One in particular I know is Mr. Alexander Dugin, who's a he's a very smart guy, and he's very good at, misinformation and disinformation. But when you look at some of his views, this guy is really extremely radical. And I know he's one of the guys that kind of I know there are different groups that kind of stand behind Putin and give him advice on how to run the state and so forth. And, philosophically, though, this guy is really dangerous. I mean, this guy is looking forward to the end of America. And so I believe that could be the source of all of what you just described there. So, Vlad, thanks for coming on. I know you got to go. I'm going to have you back. This was very informative for my audience, and I really appreciate your time. And, we'll post your videos to our site as well. And that 1619 video that you had was excellent. I watched the whole thing the other night. So I think folks go to YouTube and get the 1619 video. It's titled USA Founded on Genocide and Slavery in 1619 by the likes of Trump supporters, commies to Vlad Jav. So thanks, Vlad. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Anytime.
All right. You have a good day. Yep.
Okay. Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.